Buddha is not a product of this system. Buddha came from another system to demonstrate the third initiation. Okay. He's not homegrown.
Right.
Like Christ. Okay. So that was the appropriate thing to do at that point in time. Okay. Was for someone else to come in and jumpstart us and show us the way, because that's the first major. And it's a big deal, because you get the equipment in that one, DK says, to be able to have what you need to make the rest of the journey. You're not going there. You're not going beyond the third unless you got what you get at that period in time, according to him. So you can't jump around it like people on the emotional plane, second plane, think they can just jump up to the fourth, and they can, or the fourth can drop some information down for them, and they don't have to go through the mental plane. Absolutely not.
And it's interesting because then DK talks about this, where a bhakti, for practicing bhakti yoga, will, they can get to the fourth then, but they're not getting to the fifth. And it's so interesting to see, you really need this information. This is what has been presented to get people to that next. So the lineage of the information is there and laid out, and it's easy to see where we're at in this. And how you're saying this is new, and it is, because what we're looking at, really, HPD bringing the secret doctrine and the Theosophists from the 1800s. Just,
her secret doctrine came out 2 years before the research party from Life and Teachings went to Tibet. Just 2 years prior. And then all of this stuff comes out in print in 1922. And we get a barrage of it, interestingly enough, which is 100 years ago.
I think that's something that I have a difficult time understanding, like as far as structure. I have no idea where I'm at on the path. And my Capricorn head wants structure, like a school, you do these practices, you do this test, so now you move up, and I know what are the steps and what are the tests. And even reading The Mystical Life of Jesus, there says that he went to study with the Tibetans and then with the Egyptians, and it seemed that he had a structure of, rituals and path that he did to get the knowledge and expansion of consciousness here that he did. And I have no idea what that looks like. Like when you guys talk about reading the material, I read it, but I still do not have that sense of where I'm at and what I should be focusing on.
Well, Donnie, do you want to answer that? Who beat you?
No, Carla laughed. I say I gave Carla a lot of comedic relief for some time, some years ago, for sure. Where when she first met me, she thought, she said, well, you think you really think that you got somewhere already with this? Because I was, maybe, I don't know, experiencing some higher level astral something.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, you got, let me interject on this one. So he's talking about, he has some, I don't know if you're seeing colors or what the hell you were seeing, but it was a big lift for you. And I knew that it was basically just astral, but he thought he was already up at the monadic level. He'd gotten all the way up there. Okay. And it didn't take too long, because then I think we laughed about it. But when you realize that you hadn't already gone on the journey, hadn't even started.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
No.
thing, is find out.
But the answer to your question is you have all of that accessible to you right here and now. Again, Donnie, I pound this home. You find the writers who are living the levels they're talking to you about. And in fact, Kim and I just talked about this. And you keep putting that material in. You read it. You don't have to figure out what it says, but you've got to get it into your consciousness. And you just keep, how did you get there, Donnie? Aside from talking to me every day. And that wasn't it. How did you really get where you are now? I mean, I kicked you out once and wanted nothing more to do with you.
Right.
Playing around. And I did too, right? I mean,
No, yeah, no, certainly.
Tom knows. He was there the day I did it.
I've been there for quite a while.
It's
Yeah.
really focus. I think, I don't know. Drive and focus, and then just.
But I think you had said to me quite a bit of time later, because I didn't even talk to you for 6 or 8 months or whatever. And maybe longer, I don't know. And that you said you were right, meaning me. I was still wanting to play in a lot of different fields and pools.
Right.
Some of the shit you were reading was appalling to me, because I'm just getting the dark side of it. I'm working with you now, so I'm wondering why I'm getting these blocks of this darkness for 2-3 hours that I'm picking up, and then I finally figured out it was him. And that's when I cut the cord and you worked your back.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew, based on our conversations and understanding my North Node, and, my personality still probably I still wanted to play, and I thought it was okay to play and do whatever I wanted, because I think there's a period where we go through that, where it's just free, do whatever. I love everything and it's all fine. And then there's a process of finding out, well, that's not necessarily how this goes, my friend. And then it's just a matter of conforming and getting in line with what the soul is wanting to do. And that's a process too. First, you got to who even talks like that to understand that, I guess, is we have to have these conversations, and you have to go pretty deep to come out with something like that, I think. And then conformity to the path you learn to get, to sacrifice the things of the personality for what the soul wants to do. Is that fair?
Yeah, and the reason that I jettisoned you out of my world at that point was I was working with a whole group and I didn't want them contaminated.
Yeah, no, and DK talks about that. You can't do that because it's like a disease.
Yeah. So literally at that point, that's a reality.
Yeah.
That contamination can come through. So, I mean, you just had to go your own way, but I'm not telling you what to do. I just don't want nothing to do with you. Kind of thing. And because you were willing to expose yourself to stuff that didn't want to bring into the circle. So
yeah, no, that's fair. And more than fair. I would certainly quickly do that every time. And it should be that way.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense now. It doesn't, obviously there's no way that I understood things then in the same way as I do now.
Right.
But
so if I route back to your question about better understanding where all these things are, and you're looking back at what somebody wrote about Christ that they believe is whatever he did to get whatever he did, or but all of that. We've actually talked about it before, but you might not have been online with us. And I know Kim knows the answer at this point because we just talked about it the other day. And obviously Donnie does. You have everything. Donnie, what? You went to Tibet hoping that you were going to find what? Something more, something speedier, something more intense or real in terms of your pursuit. And what did you find?
I I I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew I needed to break all of the chains too, and and I was open to whatever. I think it was the culminate. It was just the end of a certain phase or something. You know, it was just coming to the end of it, and that marked my, you know, as a checkpoint along the way. But what I ended up finding out was exactly what we just talked about. Basically, the teaching is here. It's right where we are now, and this is it. It's not in Tibet necessarily. It's not that you're not going to get it there because that place is more restrictive than anywhere else, really.
At this point in time, because what? The Chinese are there, and their whole goal is to wipe out that whole lineage with the Dalai Lama. In 2011, I was at one of his Kali chakras, and he was talking about even then they were having the argument. He said, China comes in and tells me they're going to pick the next Dalai Lama when I die. And he said, I've told them, no, I am coming back and I will be the Dalai Lama. But you also said that all of any teachings and the Buddhists that are there, I mean, those teachings are locked up and they aren't allowed to interact with them, right? Much less teach. Isn't that what you said to me when you were in Tibet?
Yeah, they have to teach certain teachings. They're basically, it's laid out for them, the curriculum. And it does not appear that they're getting into, at least not outward, you know, outwardly, they're not getting into the secret, the things that they need to really go further. And they're not getting the experiences they need, probably either. So where the life of that goes, it's very restrictive. There's not a lot of freedom. It's the opposite of freedom in a lot of ways.
So if I understand you correctly, you realized when you came back that what you need here, the journey, it's all here available to you if you decide to pursue it. Am I correct? That's
Yeah,
what
yes, you would want to, you know, I think my thought was, okay, I need to get to a place that is of relative peace where everybody around me is getting what they need from me, technically, and then I can still have my quiet space to focus on the material and incorporate it and make it my life and change my life. Because you also really can't do that with the stress of traveling and then the stress of money constantly being taken advantage of financially. And then there's a lot of stressors in that. And then the stress of leaving people behind who still have, you know, real deep connections and stuff. So it's a balance, a real balancing act that you have to figure out, that I had to learn and still learning. I mean, it's just a matter of figuring things out. and through experience, I suppose.
But the material is here. I mean, you have it all available. And what I mean is those Bailey books, the last one was his Raisin Initiations. Okay, that was the last book they put out. There was 25 years worth of books. And that was the last volume. And then Alice Bailey left the planet because she was finished and gone. But all you need is in there. In that material, it is all laid out. There's no secrets about it. It was given to the public for anybody. He can't even and he's made remarks somewhere later, pretty far down the line. Why it's all laid out? Why aren't people pursuing this? You know, because the journey is laid out. This is all you have to do.
Yeah, but I guess this part of having mentorship makes a difference because you have all the tools and knowledge there, and then you're slipping and you're not, doing it right. Maybe like what happened with Donnie, and then if you don't have Carla kick him out, he's not gonna straighten up. And having somebody to do that, and sometimes tell you, what the heck are you doing? This is not in line with the path you chose. It makes a difference. I think Donnie even showed me once a letter that DK wrote to one of the disciples, that he even failed that initiation by understood of the letter. I'm not sure. But having somebody that is kind of, lighting a side of what you're doing, an aspect, and saying, look here, this is messed up, helps a lot.
Yeah. But by the same token, because when I started, I had no idea first of all, the vernacular is more commonplace today in the way the words are put together in those books than they were 50 years ago. I had no idea what these sentences said. Didn't mean I couldn't have repeated them immediately, and I could have no clue what was going on. Okay. But I just listened. Some of my chakras were whirling around, so I thought, well, that must be a good sign. And I just stuck with it. And that's the point, even with Donnie. I mean, if I was going to set up a set of rules, I would say, first of all, you only read material that is written by somebody who is up at that level or above what they are writing. Okay. So that you're getting, that writer can pull you up there. Just like Christ says, believe in me and I will draw you up. And there's very few people out there who are putting out material for all of the vast number of volumes of books on spirituality and all of that stuff. Now, there are very few who are at those elevated levels that are even done the work to share with you. This was a labor of love between DK and Alice Bailey. The work was all done telepathically. They were not in the same room. They didn't have a telephone, none of that. It was just telepathic work. If you can work with those, and Annie Besant is very well versed and understands this. She's the one who went over when the Theosophical Society fell apart. She went to India and continued it over there. She and one of the other members took 34 years and did the etheric reading on the structure of every element on the elemental charts. They drew the design of the way it really orbits and its weight. And this was all done before you had any of these microscopes or anything else that eventually came out and did the same thing. And they were fully accurate. But it took them 34 years because they had to get every element Then they had to sit and do the etheric vision and between the two of them and lay that out. So she's quite knowledgeable, and she's able to write in ways that are pretty easy to understand. So a study in consciousness is an important piece of material, but you need to bring that material into your mind. You are using what's called the new prayer from DK talks about it, invocation, evocation. You put that material in, you read it. It will, because this is a dual system, so it's like physical consciousness will tell you all of this is already in consciousness. You just need to invoke it. And the invoke is with these books, because that will go pull the counter material, the matching material, which expands your consciousness and pulls you up into those realms, builds that in those upper realms. That it's that simple. Basically, Donnie?
Yeah, and the questions get answered. But what's the Bible say? You got to have faith, and have faith, and because you I think I was talking to somebody. I said, well, you may be very mental, but we don't have the foundation of the material to understand it yet. So then you have to build that foundation in, and it'll start linking up, and it'll assimilate, and then now it'll line up, and then you'll move past even where you were, and then keep going, and it'll be more expansive, more information. You just keep building it in, and then there's an overload, and that's great, because then there's the crisis, tension, and emergence, and then you reach a point where you really can't read anymore, and you just have to take a break, and then you let it sit, and then you'll have your revelation, or your understanding will come through at some point, and a nice release, and maybe what the ring past knot is expanded slightly, and now you're in a more expansive space, and you can add more in again, and then the process can continue.
Yeah,
So
but
you have to build the tension.
yeah, but you're not going to be able to measure it in the same way you would if you were building a box made out of wood in front of you. You're not going to have that tangibility, but it's going to be happening up here. In other words, people probably want an expectation that they can get an evaluator whenever they want. Okay, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And you can't get it with absolute proof at any given time. You have a sense of where you are. I mean,
That's creating the tension too. That's nice. It's good.
But what I'm saying is, if you want to be, you can't miss the third because it has so many physical parts yet. Okay. But anything after that, you're not going to be able to measure it and see it as a tangible item. Okay, I got this, I got this, I got this. It doesn't work that way. I mean, you know that. You're not getting a physical replica of everything that's going on in your head. And believe me, there'll be times when you wonder, right?
Oh, all the time. All the time.
Yeah. And yet, you're in a very different place than you were 3 years ago, right?
Oh, even 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, way different.
So the answer to that is Donnie knows it because I keep pounding it into him. He's got it now. He understands. And it was the same thing with Michael Robbins, who's got a great body of work on Makara now. But I knew him from our paths had crossed when we were in our early 20s, and then out here in California, I didn't know him. I just helped some of his friends early, and our paths crossed. And I would ask him every once in a while because he was a third ray monad from the moon chain. Okay. And so the moon chain and that third ray was the first system that we had that created the intelligent activity. In other words, substance that had capable of intelligent activity. That was a whole first solar system. Now this is Blavatsky, and don't figure you have to know too much about this. And when that system was finished, now we're in the second system, and we are taking we have the intelligent activity, and now we're in a realm where we want to think and thought. And so that's your magnetism, your consciousness, creating consciousness, spirit and matter. That's what we're doing, is putting those together. Creates consciousness. We don't know it. We don't know what we're running around with this piece of equipment for, until you get somebody who really understands it. And so what he said, and this is the system where you create love. So Michael Robbins is saying, I'm from the moon chain, third ray monad. I don't understand anything about love. Okay, because love didn't have anything to do with that first, the moon chain. And the first solar system, we didn't have anything to make union with it. We do now. And so what he said was, because I would see him every so often, I'd say, how's it going? He says, I'm slowly building it in. In other words, what he didn't have, and he's doing the same thing. And he lived and breathed DK, I would say almost 24 hours a day. And that's how you do it. You build it in. And that's what the invocation, evocation is all about, because there is a duality. When you invoke by reading this material, putting it in your consciousness, then the magnetics of what else is related to it that's going to expand it shows up in here. The other thing that's amazing is you will find every so often, if you have reason to draw some of this information out for whatever reason, you find out how much more you know that you didn't even realize you knew. And that's because you've been building it, and you've been collecting on that consciousness side, and you've been building that consciousness, moving up, filling those sub levels of your chart you got on the wall. And but you basically down here don't have much reason to recall it or draw it forward. But when you do, then you realize, oh my God, I didn't know that I knew that and that. And sometimes it just comes out because you're talking. Sometimes it comes out you want to write something down or whatever. But you literally are building it in, and that is the way it is done right now. We're moving into the age of Aquarius. You are the observer, and your real power tool is thought. They'll all tell you, you've got to go to the mind, and it's your thoughts that get directed, and so on and so forth. Those are your key pieces of equipment at this point in time. I don't know if that helps at all.
It helps.
Because that pretty much is what you've been doing, isn't it, Donnie?
Yes.
I mean, you're reading it and putting it online. You're reading it.
Yeah, you find out what works and then you start to stick with it, I think. And then yeah, Tom and I have been on Sundays for, a long time. And when we talk, all sorts of stuff comes out that we didn't, because he reads a lot. He'll read Agni Yoga. I'm reading DK, something DK, and then, we'll swap verses from Agni Yoga or something that we picked up through the week. And then we talk on Sundays, and then all sorts of interesting stuff comes out that we didn't even, like you're saying, I didn't even think about that. It just comes blurting out of us, and
Yeah, and to make a note, so Master Dwalku and the author of Agni Yoga, Master Moria, are in the same grouping, by the way, up in Tibet when all of this was happening. Okay. So in other words, they're connected to start with. So they're from the same foundational basis. One's first ray, that's Moria. He's a master first ray. I don't know, what do they mark? Dwalku.
second ray.
Yeah, but is it, and Kuthumi is second ray.
Yeah.
The point is they're all from the same group. So it's not like you're really having to go out and stretch. There's 5 of them or something, isn't there?
Apparently they live very close to each other. And
Yeah. And then this all starts with Rorik's, the Russian couple that go up there often, and he's the artist. So that's a part of the reason that we probably got more awareness at that early parts of the 1900s is because they brought attention to them. They would go up to see them. They were, I don't want to say entertained by them, but they were living in and had interactions with these people. And they decided, and it's indicated in Life and Teachings also, that they just figured out that it was easier for them to work in the mental realm and send their information out like they did to Alice Bailey. And they impact a lot more people than if they were coming out and having classes somewhere.
Well, that's why they talk about the Christ in the many here soon. Like it'll come out in a lot of the initiates or disciples.
Well, there has to be a lot of them in right now, actually, that came in for this transition. They'll be all over the place. Yeah.
I don't know. You catch the bug and then you got it and then you're locked in and then you know what's working for you and what doesn't work. And you know what you can do and what you can't do. And then you know what adds more light and what takes away from it. And you have to learn that through experience.
So something we mentioned again yesterday in Pat when we were talking is, and I don't remember exactly how I said it. I know what I meant, but when you were starting to make that connection and knowing that you wanted to run down this path. Okay. And so I said something to you about, and because you were probably afraid you were going to lose it with daily events or whatever. And so I had said to you, I know what I said, but I don't know the exact words. The principle of the concept was putting that just up at the top of your mind, holding that focus Do you know what I'm saying?
So letting it run in the background,
Yeah,
just letting it stay there constantly.
you just
Yeah.
put it in park. It's that intent, that will, that direction, that focus towards God. Not that you got a grip on them yet, but the focus is there and the
Mhm.
intent, so that you kind of put that up in your mind in park, and it's always there. You can sense that it's there. You don't have to do much else. You got a life, you got to do other stuff. But it's then you hold your focus. You've got that focus, and it's will, because will is important in that direction, because you direct your energy through your will. But I don't know, is there a better way do you remember what I said? It's been a long time.
No, that's exactly what you said. You said put it in park. Yeah.
Yeah, up there.
Keep it there and
Imagine it being there, and then know that and you can always check on it until it gets permanent.
well, and you've said many, 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 many times that there are a lot of things happening in the background that we don't understand. Or we don't know.
Yeah, the connections when you make them, because it's indicated that our brain's not going to record it and drop it down to us, but it's happening. And that's why DK says when you do move up, you would have had the third, and then you move up into that spiritual triad and have access to it. See, we look for meaning. What does this mean? What does that meaning? What, kind of thing. The concept is, and the meaning is when you're down here below the third initiation, because you're looking to your soul. That's who's answering you. That's who's in there, that when you ask a question, what does this mean or that mean? Or if you have tried to evaluate something you're seeing, you're evaluating against the entire synthesis of your experience on this planet to date. Okay, so when you look at the nodes, for example, where your spiritual journey, you've got the compilation of everything you've ever done, okay, is stored in that soul from the very beginning of you being here and having some awareness. And so that gets synthesized and stored and is conscious. Okay, there's a degree of conscious awareness in that, within the soul. But I don't think most people even interact with their soul until they really have the third. It's there and it's guiding you. It's interestingly enough called the ego in daily material, because it is going to ride roughshod if it can. If you get too far off track, it'll make you sick to try to get you back on track. The soul will. It'll do something, whatever's appropriate. I've seen it. People get themselves in way beyond whatever they should be doing. They know it. They can't get out. So they get so sick that they have to be put in the hospital or something for a while to make the break, because they can't just say, I can't do this anymore. Okay. And then they can get back on their route when they get separated from that and change the pattern. The soul will do that. To give you an idea, of people ask me about twins. Okay, they got the same chart. Don't they going to have the same life? And I said, no, we're talking about a personality, not a soul. We can have a young soul and an old soul in the set of twins. You give them the same sets of circumstances, and the old soul, who has much more experience and background in being here, is going to do whatever they're going to do, and a new soul, a young soul who's just learning, will probably do something very different. Okay, less complicated. They haven't had those experiences. So, but anyway, the journey has to be made by you. You decide it, And like Donnie said, you get bit by it, you get bit by the bug, so to speak, or you just have a driving force within you that can start when you're very young, or you put things together that you don't even realize at early. I think, I saw my grandmother's sister. I was 9 years old and we went to a funeral for her sister, and I'd seen her sister maybe 6 weeks earlier or something. Very alive, very animated, very loud. In our world, we didn't have that many loud people in those days. Now they got me. But anyway, and so when the funeral was done, then they had the viewing, the box was open on the and I thought, and I was free because my dad was already out playing cards, and I don't know where my mother was, taking care of my sister probably. So I'm running free. So I think this is interesting, and I shuffle my way up the line. They go slow and walk, look in the box, and my mind just said nobody home. And I didn't think much about that at that point in time. But by the time I was 20, I was out on my own, live in California then. And I thought, I would like to know how that animated life and that body hooked up. That's what I want to know at 21 years of age. Okay. But it had probably been percolating in the back of my mind. I had never thought about any other funerals or caskets or anything like that. But my mind, my consciousness had, because that's certainly one of the elevated events in the spiritual world, right? You die and your soul leaves, and you got this actually, when they cremate them now, I mean, it's more ash and it's heavier than you really think. But anyway, so if you put the material in, that consciousness is going to work with it. And that consciousness is through the entire universe. DK will tell you in one of these books that where our history is kept up to date every second, that he said then that, for example, there would be a larger system. So let's assume it might be the solar system. And there is some consciousness that is fully aware of everything that's going on in that solar system all at the same time and has a record of it. And then he goes on to talk about, then there's other systems that are much larger that encompass more of what's out there, until he indicated that at its grandest state, there is a consciousness that has complete control, understanding, awareness of everything in the universe, always. And I think he makes some remark about can you imagine that? In other words, a conscious awareness of all of that at one time. But I think it's quite practical. I wouldn't doubt it one bit, because that's basically the capacity of this entire system. And it's going to be conscious because it's alive. It's all alive. So when I talk about life, I usually talk about it with the big L. In other words, it really is the life force. And it's with you when you're alive, when you have life, and it vacates when the form is no longer has it. It's moved on elsewhere. It didn't go away.